Hey everybody, I hope you are all doing great. Today we're gonna be talking about the video game Legacy of Kain, Defiance. So we're gonna see how this video game brings the Gothic genre to life by weaving its dark architecture, terrifying monsters, and supernatural forces into a story that explores decay, duality, and the struggle for control. So let's start. So before we delve into the topic of Gothic elements in this video game, it is important to mention that Legacy of Kain Defiance is an action-adventure game made by Crystal Dynamics and released by Eidos Interactive. It came out for PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC, and it's actually the fifth and last game in the whole Legacy of Kain series. So now I'm gonna tell you like a summary of the plot of this video game. So basically in this video game you play as two different characters. The first character is Kain, this ruthless vampire who's basically had enough of being the puppet of destiny, and the second character, Raziel, a tormented wraith who was Kain's most loyal lieutenant until Kain tossed him into a lake of souls and left him to rot for eternity. Now, they are both chasing answers across this world that is crumbling. You know, you can see the cathedrals in ruins, the ghost-filled temples, and the vampire strongholds. So Kain wants to break the chains of fate, while Raziel is on this personal mission to find out the truth behind his death. So as they dig deeper, they both end up uncovering horrifying truths about their origins, about the vampire race, and the real puppet master behind everything that is called the Elder God. You know, this monster with massive tentacles that has been feeding off the souls of the dead and that has been basically controlling the wheel of fate. So, in the end of the video game, it all comes down to Brazil making the ultimate sacrifice because he merges with this weapon that is called the Soul River Blade. So he basically becomes the weapon that Kain needs to finally challenge the Elder Gods. And you know, it's a tragic and dark story, but it is also this. It also has this interesting moment of redemption for the characters. Is one of those stories where every character is haunted and everything is cursed and fate is just like another enemy. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about the Gothic architecture in this video game. So basically, in the video game is that style you see in the old cathedrals and castles, and but just to give you like an overview, Gothic architecture started back in the 12th century, as you may already know from the professor's presentation, and the idea was to build places that felt huge and powerful, like something holy or even a little spooky. And the goal was that when you walked into one of these buildings, you would feel tiny, like you had entered a place full of mystery. And in effect, that is exactly what we can perceive in the Legacy of Kain video game, because you constantly see these very tall structures that make you feel small, but also full of awe and curiosity, which is perfect for engaging players deeper into the game. So basically, as you can perceive on the screen, these elements are relevant, are paramount in this video game. They are everywhere. Now, going deeper into the Gothic architecture, I believe that one of the most striking things about this type of architecture is the pointed arches. Actually, unlike the rounded ones you can see in the Roman buildings, like these ones are pointing straight up, like kind of guiding your eyes toward the sky. And I believe that in the past, this kind of architecture was used to tell people that their goal was like in the sky. So, and in this video game, you can see this kind of structure everywhere. Like when you are playing the video game, when you go into this big castle and you look at the windows, you will perceive these pointed arches everywhere. So it is very important in the video game. Also, there are those super tall spires, those, those sharp towers that look like they are piercing through the clouds. It's all designed to give this feeling of reaching up to something bigger, almost like something spiritual or otherworldly. And actually, you can perceive these elements as well. The tall spires in this video game everywhere, especially when you are outside. You see these big spires everywhere that I believe that they as well make you feel like little because they are so tall, and you are like down there looking at these humongous architecture. So yeah. So one thing you'll notice in the ceilings of Legacy of Kain is like this kind of crisscross pattern made of stone, which is called a rip vault. It's basically a way they used to build really high ceilings back in the Gothic days without everything collapsing. But I believe what is interesting about this architecture is the way it looks. And actually, in the game, it gives the buildings like this creepy ancient feel, almost like you're walking through the bones of something huge. And I believe it really adds to the atmosphere and makes the space feel both grand and at the same time unsettling. So you can perceive these elements, these ripped vaults in the images that you have on screen. And I believe that definitely the video game wouldn't be the same without these elements. Now, another thing that really stands out in Gothic architecture and that you will see a lot in the Legacy of Kain are the flying buttresses. They are those arch-like supports you see on the outside of big cathedrals, and they were used to hold up the really tall walls and keep everything stable. But I believe that visually, you well, they give like the building this spider-like look, and in the game is really important because of the theme of this game that is always like very dark. So I believe that it has a huge impact in the video game. So it is like the world is barely holding itself together, supported by these huge old bones, let's say. And it's subtle, but it really helps building that dark crumbling atmosphere. So another important element of Gothic architecture that you will perceive in this video game is the stained glass window. So there are a lot of stained glass windows in this video game. So I believe it is probably one of the most beautiful parts of Gothic architecture. And in real life, they were used to tell religious stories through images and light. But in Legacy of Kain, they add like this mystical, almost sacred vibe to the environment. So when light shines through them, there's like this moment of tranquility that gives you the light when it takes darkness away. So I believe these windows with its shiny colors make this humongous castle feel even more haunting, right? So finally, another important element of Gothic architecture that is present in Legacy of Kain is the decorations on the walls. And I believe they play an important role in this video game, since when you are playing the video game and you look at these carved elements, these carved figures like the gargoyles, the angels, the demons, and these twisted figures, you feel like you are being lurked by these figures, and it is almost as if they were alive, as if the whole structure were alive, and they were observing you. And you know I believe these images not only add like this feeling of mystery, but also this feeling of fear, which is very important uh, when we when we talk about the topic of the theme of these video games. So yeah.
Well, hi, I'm Gretchen, and today I'm going to talk about monsters. Well, Legacy of Kain is known for its rich lore and unique monster designs. Those those aspects contribute significantly to the game's atmosphere. Well, first of all, I'm going to talk about these main supernatural creatures in the Legacy of Kain. The vampires. Well, the vampires possess supernatural powers, including enhanced strength, agility, and the ability to manipulate elements. Well, now I'm going to mention some monsters of Legacy of Kain. First, we have here the Slavs. Well, Slavs are the craven feral scavengers of the underworld, prowling the spectral realm like jackals. It means that they are spectral predators. Well, here we have one of the important characters in the Legacy of Cain, the Elder God. The Elder God is an ancient, omnipresent, and omniscient creature who was worshipped by the ancients, one of the races that inhabited Nazgûl. Well, this character is pretty important because during the whole game, during the plot, he's manipulating other characters. And as I said before, he's omnipresent and night omniscient. So he's aware of everything. He knows everything in the game. Well, everything that is happening in the game. Well, we have another example of monsters of Legacy of Kain, and he's Toril. Tyrell is a bat and he's Raziel's brother. And Tyrell is a good example of the grotesque. Yeah, that aspect that we have studied in this course. Because he is characterized by bizarre distortions, especially in the exaggerated or abnormal depiction of human features. Okay, that means that he seems or he looks so exaggerated or abnormal to the human sight. And here we have Myrtanius. Myrtanius the necromancer. Well, he was the guardian of the Pillar of Death, one of their circle of nine, and as such, he had a certain amount of influence over the grave and the spirits of the dead. He is a good character, and it is pretty important in the plot of the video game. And here we have the mythical, the most powerful character and most famous character in the Legacy of Cain. Cain. Well, Cain is a vampire, but he was born human and then turned into a vampire when he was resurrected. An interesting fact is that Cain cannot touch water because he's cursed for being a supernatural creature, and it is related to the holy water thing. Well, you know that it is pretty characteristic of a Gothic literature that supernatural creatures such as vampires can are not allowed to touch or use any holy any holy thing or like yeah thing or tool accessory such as crosses, rosaries, and of course they are not well they cannot touch the holy water. And at last but not least we have Raziel. Raziel is a vampire. Raziel, just like Cain, he was born human and then turned into a vampire. But Raziel is a pretty interesting character. Besides being one of the protagonists, he is a soul reaper specter. That means that he looks for souls in order to restore the balance in Nazgûl. Raziel's name comes from the angel prince of the cherubs. His name means secret of God. And this is something interesting that caught my attention because since it is a biblical reference, just like Cain, that it's a biblical name. And I remember, just as in Rabachini's daughter, that Hawthorne develops the archetype of the Garden of Eden. And Gothic literature often incorporates biblical or religious references, though, though not always in a positive way. These references can serve to criticize themes such as morality and good versus evil, or just to create an atmosphere of horror and mystery, for example.
Now we are advancing and we are going to talk about the supernatural as it is present in Legacy of Kain Defiance. And we start this subtopic by talking about the unheimlich, or what causes unease, and at the same time a sense of familiarity with the player. For instance, here we have the spectral realm, which is a place in which the player can see a physical space that is distorted. This place is asymmetrical and inclined. For instance, here in this image, we are seeing a Vorador's mansion, and these pillars or these columns that you can see here look inclined. And this allows the player to climb to heights that he's unable to reach in the physical world. For in the physical world, these pillars would be straight, completely straight. And another characteristic that adds to the unheimlich, or to the unease of this place, is that the player is unable to interact with objects such as doors. So he is unable to uh, progress in the game because he cannot open the doors to the outside. Thus, the player feels trapped in a place such as Vorador's mansion in this case, and many other places where the player encounters in the physical realm. Another another manifestation of the unheimlich happens in the physical world, and in this case, we can see Cain facing two gargoyles. These gargoyles were statues, and well, as you may know, statues are part of the decoration of the place. But when they come to life, they create a sense of insecurity because the player doesn't know then if something else is going to attack him. In this case, these statues come to life and they are surrounded by a layer of fire that doesn't permit the player to attack those statues. So once the player attacks the statues, he suffers harm. He has to wait until the layers of fire fade in order to be able to damage or to harm these statues. Magic is also present throughout the game, and it is part of the supernatural aspect of it. For instance, we can see Raziel here with his river, which was just enhanced with the elemental power of fire. This will allow Raziel not only to open doors that require a source of fire to be open, but also to perform special attacks when the river is fed on souls and is fully charged. So the player can also ignite enemies in order to kill them easily. But this river, rather than a weapon serves also as a key to keep progressing in the game and also to become more and more powerful until the encounter with Kain happens. Additionally, both players have the power of moving things with their own will. This allows them to perform large distance attacks, such as in the case of the slide that we are seeing right now, in which Kain is attacking Mobius, the time streamer, with his telekinetic powers. He is controlling Mobius from a medium distance in this case, but also he is able to do so against enemies from a very long distance. Also, with this power, players are able to break walls and also open doors. Also, something very important when using Raziel is the fact that Raziel can return to the spectral world whenever he wants. But it doesn't happen the way around, because in order to return to the physical world, Raziel needs a conduit, which are these strange purple glasses that emerge from tombs and are in very specific places. So if the player decides to go to the spectral realm to look for souls in order to feed Raziel, and that place doesn't have a conduit to return to the physical world, then the player will be trapped in the spectral world and will have to wait until the character dies in order to be able to find again a conduit into the physical realm. Besides the conduits to the physical realm and the spectral realm, we also have other conduits that can transport the player through time and space. In this case, we have these warps that transport the player to the chambers where the rivers are going to be enhanced. Also, these teletransportation warps serve the player as conduits to different moments in time. For instance, Kain is able to travel 500 years in the future in order to meet Raziel through one of these warps. Another magical element that we can see in Legacy of Kain Defiance is the power of foreseeing the future. In this case, the confrontation between uh, Cain and Raziel was prophesied. What wasn't prophesied was its outcome. It was very ambiguous because, as you can see in one of the depictions, in one of the pictures, we can see Cain being killed, and in the other, we can see Raziel being killed. So the ending is what we don't know, but we long to know it as we progress because we want to know who is the one of the vampires that we control that is going to prevail, because as the game advances we become identified with both of them and with their purposes. And talking about supernatural powers, we also have to talk about the ability of the Hilden, the enemies of the vampires, to curse, because they curse the vampires not only with immortality but also with bloodthirst and sterility. Immortality is something that is seen as negative in the game because, according to Janus Outram, immortality banished the vampires from God's grace, and by the fact that they cannot die, at least by age, because they can be killed, vampires cannot purify their souls, and they are condemned to existence, in which when they die they will return to uh, the spectral realm, and in that spectral realm where Raziel is, the vampires are condemned to return again to life, and in doing so, their souls will not be able to purify themselves. Another important aspect when it comes to magic in this game is the fact that vampires can turn humans into one of their race. For instance, we can see here Janus Odron turning Vorador, a human, into a vampire. This event is very important because Vorador is going to become the forging of the Riverblade that Kain and Raziel hold. So his role in the game is crucial, especially when the player playing Raziel arrives at Vorador's mansion, a place that is the passage to Avernus Cathedral, where the evil source that is possessing humans and also destroying the vampire race is manifesting. This evil force, the Elder God, is also able to possess people. He used humans, vampires, and monsters as vessels to destroy the vampire race, and one of the visible signs of such possession is their flaming green eyes. This is very significant because when we first meet the monster in the underworld, acting as Raziel, we can see that the monster is color green and that he has an enormous eye that seem to be able to see everything. In this case, it seems that that monster is omniscient in this game because uh, once out of the underworld, Raziel comes across some humans that are being possessed by this entity. Talking about entities, another crucial aspect of this is the role of the ghosts in Legacy of Kain Defiance. In the case of Raziel, they are very important because they are necessary to keep Raziel alive. Every time the player kills an enemy when using Raziel, he is able to see the spirit of that enemy and also devour it in order to fill the life gouge and keep Raziel alive. It is also very important because those souls on which Raziel feeds also feed the Elder God, who is at the end the enemy. But Raziel needs them in order to stay alive and keep on progressing. If there are no enemies around and the life of the player is falling short, then the player needs to return to the spectral realm to look for ghosts that can be wandering about or that can be also enemies that he will kill there in the spectral realm in order to steal their souls and eat them. But not all spirits are meant to feed Raziel. Some of them are meant to defeat him. And one of them is the Spectre of Nature, one of the several specters that appear in the chambers where Raziel needs to find the enhancements for his blade. Raziel has to defeat them in order to unlock the sources of the elemental power that he is looking for. In this case, Raziel is looking for the elemental power of wind in order to reach Vorador's mansion. But to do so, he first has to defeat the Spectre of Nature. And also, he has to defeat many other specters to find the other elemental powers for his blade in order to, as you know, solve the different puzzles and open the different doors to his destiny. Last but not least, we have Ariel, who is the ghost that haunts the pillars of Nosgoth. She is key in the game because she is the one who shows Raziel the way to Vorador's mansion, which is deep within the Black Forest. Also, she is the one that provides the final enhancement for Raziel's river in order to help him progress and purify his sword. In conclusion, Legacy of Kain Defiance is a game that presents several aspects of the Gothic genre. For instance, combining an incredible architecture typical of the Gothics and also presenting us with the grotesque with monsters that are very memorable and well designed, and finally, a supernatural aspect that makes the game very intriguing and at the same time very appealing. We can say that even though throughout the game we long for the confrontation between Raziel and Kain, at the end, what we learn is that they are not necessarily enemies, but two sides of the same coin.